Hey everyone, welcome back to the game plan. My name is Eric Harris and I am the host of the show. We had two amazing leaders in the intellectual and developmental disabilities community, two women from California who are really in the forefront of advocacy and doing amazing work for the disability community. First, we have Lisa Cooley, who is a self advocate leader who has been in all types of spaces, both as a self advocate, advocate for others in the community, a leader speaking with and communicating with elected officials. But Lisa Cooley has been really at the forefront of leadership for folks in the intellectual and developmental disabilities community. Likewise, we have Marisa Hamamoto, who is the founder of Infinite Flow Dance. She also identifies as someone who has an intellectual and developmental disability and found out about her disabilities later in life. But she has been really an incredible leader, especially when it comes to working with both folks with and without disabilities, teaching them how to dance, express themselves, kind of being involved in art and film, and she really gets into it with some amazing conversation today. So we're really glad that you all are checking out the show and hope you all enjoy it.
The Game Plan is a production of Disability Rights California, a space to strategize, organize, and posterize for the future of the disability rights movement. For more information on our work, please visit us at disabilityrightsca.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Game Plan with Disability Rights California. My name is Eric Harris, and I am the Associate Executive Director of External Affairs at Disability Rights California. And today we have an amazing guest, a leader, an advocate, and just an incredible leader in the disability movement and in our community, Lisa Cooley, who I actually met during my initial process of joining DRC during my interview process. And it's wonderful to have you, Lisa.
It's it's great to be with everyone and thank you for the opportunity to be interviewed today.
Absolutely. What was your experience with disability, either for yourself or for others that you were around? Um, what was your experience with disability?
Growing up with the disability was challenging at times, not because of my disability itself, which is cerebral palsy, but because of having access to things like free and appropriate education, at least at first. And then as I grew up and went to middle school and high school, it was mostly dealing with accessibility issues
Hmm.
because I grew up and went to high school before the ADA was even a thing in the mid 80s through late 80s and early 90s.
Wow. And it's interesting because, and you've talked about this before, that, um, having a disability itself is not necessarily an issue or a bad thing uh, or a so-called, challenge as other folks might say, but it's how the services and the others around you react to your disability, making sure that you have the accommodations that you need, What was that like as you were in school and kind of growing up? You said it was before the ADA, but how was it making sure that you had, what you needed to have?
My my mother was and still is my biggest advocate. But
Mm,
over the years, I learned how to advocate for myself and what I needed related to my education, especially after high school and going to college.
mm, mm. Wow. Yeah, no, that's very similar to a lot of us with disabilities, especially if we were born with our disabilities. Our parents become our biggest advocate and kind of hand the baton off to us to be our own advocates and our own leaders in that way. You have served in the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. You were the vice chair. You worked very closely with the governor and with state government, policymakers, policy advocates. Um, as we enter the last year of this governor, Governor Newsom's last year in office as governor of California, what's your assessment of how disability rights have been addressed over the last several years under his administration, just from your opinion?
I think that one part of disability advocacy for the Newsom administration, even though the administration is attempting to address it, is the lack of consistent employment for people who have not only IDD, but also other combinations of disabilities. For the last, I would say, maybe 7 or 8 years, we've all talked about the need for people who have disabilities who want to work to be able to work. But as far as I know, the numbers of employment for people who have disabilities hasn't increased as fast as it should have increased.
Mm, mm. And especially, I mean, you know this, California is the birthplace of the disability movement. And many would think that if you're the birthplace of the disability movement, that you would be leading on a lot of these issues. And employment has certainly been a space where California is not leading when it comes to employment for disabled folks generally, people with IDD, people in state government. We're just lagging behind. What message would you want to send to the next governor when it comes to some of these issues?
I would say do more than talk about disability employment. Put appropriate action steps in place to increase numbers related to disability employment and make it easier for people who have disabilities, and especially disabilities that require some sort of home care
Mm,
for people who have disabilities. Make home care not only a benefit that person with that people with disabilities can benefit from in their personal lives, but make home care a benefit that they can use more in their professional lives if they need to, so they can not only have employment but maintain whatever employment is appropriate for them.
that's right. Next question I have for you, independent living. You mentioned it, and the independent living movement is as important to disabled people and to our collective advocacy as anything that we have. Um, there is a national movement with independent living. There is a statewide movement with independent living. But what does independent living itself actually mean to you? Um, and for people who are outside of the independent living movement, how would you best describe it?
To me, independent living means that people are not completely independent if they have a disability, they're more interdependent
Mm, mm,
on other
abs-
people as well as different systems that support them throughout their lifespan.
Absolutely. And you've done work with local independent living centers, resources for independent living, California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, and others. What would you say, has been your experience working with them, and how do they help people directly?
They help people directly by giving them resources and teaching them how to get connected to individual services and doing systems advocacy. I think that they need to do more outreach to not only seniors who have disabilities, but also young people that are coming up in the disability movement
Mm. No, that's exactly right.
who
Um,
need different supports than somebody who's a senior.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, right. Disability is throughout the lifespan, right? You can have a disability as a young child, you can have a disability as a young adult, older adult, senior citizen, all the way through life. So it's really crucial that our independent living centers are thinking about the complete spectrum of disability with throughout the lifespan. Um, you've talked
And
a little,
you could acquire disability because of accidents or injuries
that's right. That's right. Um,
or illnesses.
That's right. Anytime, anybody, it's a fully inclusive opportunity to get a disability at any point. I think that, we get opportunities, and I know you could talk about opportunities that you've gotten to speak at um in different settings, whether it's speaking to students or speaking to folks in different professions. One of the things that I always jump at when there's an opportunity to do so is speaking to medical students.
Yes,
Um,
I've done that.
yeah, it's important.
Do it.
It is very, very important. And I know you could talk about the message that you try to send to medical students. Uh, and, it's something that they tend to really appreciate. They appreciate having a disabled person come and tell them about the experiences that we've had and why it's important to really understand disability and some of the ranges of disabilities that we all have.
And another problem that I tend to have with the medical field and disability is that when they hear that I have cerebral palsy, there seems to be, at, at least to me, a sort of checklist that goes off in people's head.
Mm,
And if I don't fit everything that's on their mental checklist, they don't know how to handle it
mm,
professionally.
mm. And when that happens, Lisa, how comfortable are you um, giving direct feedback? Because I know a lot of folks, when they get in these sorts of circumstances, whether it's being in front of medical professionals or others, um, you can be a little nervous and it could be a little uncomfortable to push back. But what has your experience been like, and how comfortable are you like being critical if a doctor or a medical professional is not treating you with the level of respect that you feel you need?
A long time ago, as a kid, I wasn't very comfortable telling them how they should treat me in a medical setting.
Mm,
But as I've gotten older and learned more about the process of becoming a doctor
mm,
and my disability related needs, I tend to speak up more about my needs at appointments with someone there with me
mm, mm,
to support me.
mm. That's really crucial, Lisa, and I'm glad you pointed that out that while you certainly have the independence to be able to speak out and let folks know about your um, your experience or your thoughts relating to what medical professionals are telling you, it is nice to have additional support. Somebody who so-called has your back, somebody who is making sure that everything is being taken care of properly. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. With employment, education, housing, transportation, all the points that you've been bringing up, I really hope that policymakers, elected officials, leaders in our state and throughout the country really take the time to listen to and work directly with disabled people because we are the ones with the experience.
And policymakers not only need to listen to us as people with disabilities, but they also need to listen to our family members and friends so they're able to speak on behalf of their siblings or other family members who might not have the ability to publicly and openly speak the way I'm speaking today to you
Mm-hmm.
and your audience.
No, that's exactly right because it's interesting. I mean, I've always felt strongly that it's not just Eric or Lisa who is a part of the disability community. If you really think about it, our families have been included as experiencing what a disabled person, goes through often, especially when we're talking about accommodations that are needed, thinking about discrimination that we've all experienced. And it's really, really important that we have family voices, leaders, parents, others who can give a real thoughtful um, experience and position on a variety of issues, understanding that no, they don't have a disability, they're not speaking for disabled people, but their experiences and connection to disability is really, really crucial. Is there a movie or a TV show or a book that you're really excited about right now or that really fits the moment that you would recommend people take a look at or check out?
I love any kind of award show on TV.
Mm.
I love different Olympic sports like figure skating and swimming
Oh,
and any kind of Paralympic type sport.
hey, that's right. No, that's a good one, Lisa. And as you probably know, the Olympics and Paralympics for the Winter Games are going to be starting here soon. So I know you mentioned figure skating. Are there any other winter sports that you're particularly looking forward to checking out?
I love the what do you call that? That sledding sport?
Oh, so there's a lot of different ones, but are you talking about bobsledding?
Yeah, where
That-
where people scrunch themselves and go go down a long chute like thing.
That's right. That's right. No, it's a. I always appreciate sports that I know I would have no business getting involved in, or I would be way too afraid to try out because doing bobsledding seems like one of those sports where you have to be very brave, courageous, and you just have to get in it and do it because they go so fast and it's so intense that it would put a lot of fear in me. But I can't wait to watch that as well. So it's wonderful to talk to you, Lisa. The final question that I have for you: what is your game plan for 2026? What are some of the things that whether it's involved in advocacy or any other part of your journey, what are the things that you're really looking forward to getting involved in?
I would like to do more housing advocacy, more advocacy related to healthcare and disability, and more advocacy related to aging.
Mhm. No, I appreciate that, Lisa. And I think, something that Disability Rights California is trying to do on that last point is really show the deep connection between aging and disability. I think for many years, and you can speak to this as a longtime advocate here in California, we almost separated, having disability on this side and having aging on that side and not recognizing or at least not acting on hey, a lot of the folks who have disabilities age into other disabilities, or a lot of older adults obtain disabilities as they get older. So just really important, kind of bringing that connection of disability and aging, and I think that's something we really want to take seriously in 2026.
I think I think both of our service systems need to do more collaboration
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
because, like you said earlier, aging and disability are not always separate.
That's right. That's right. Well, Lisa, I really appreciate your time and thank you so much for joining us here at the Game Plan with Disability Rights California.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too.
We are super excited to welcome a very special guest, Marisa Hamamoto from Los Angeles. Welcome, Marisa.
Hello, Eric. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I'm talking to a sibling right now.
That's right. That's right. No, it's been wonderful to work with you and connect with you. I feel like it's been several years now of us collaborating and connecting and just lifting each other up on all different types of platforms and all of those sorts of things. So it's so wonderful to have you as a guest on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So as a starting point with the game plan, we always like to find out about folks' disability journey. I know everybody's journey is completely different. So anything you want to put out there, anything you want to say about your own disability journey?
Sure, absolutely. So, when I was 24 in college, I had a spinal stroke that initially paralyzed me from the neck down. My physical recovery came pretty fast, I would say. After being in the hospital for about a couple months, I did walk out, but there is still some paralysis in my body, especially on the left side. So, I have a left hand that is slightly paralyzed. My left side is a little bit numb. Some days it's a little bit more numb than others. But I don't really consider myself to have a physical disability. I do feel my paralysis out of I do feel my paralysis when I dance, which is
Mm,
the interesting thing. It's almost like a reminder of who I am and where I came from. So I kind of don't really see it as like a hindrance, but rather as like a reminder of who I am and what I stand for. And then in terms of my other disability, I was diagnosed with autism
mm,
3.5 years ago. So I guess this is a disability that I was born with that I wish I had known about growing up, but
mm,
I found out that I was autistic 3.5 years ago. And it was through being in the disability community for up to then about 6 years, 7 years of leading infinite flow dance,
mm,
learning about different disabilities, both apparent and non-apparent, and learning about neurodivergence. Full transparency, I did neurodivergence. Neurodiversity were not words in my vocabulary when I started Infinite Flow in 2015. So it was through the community organically educating me that I started to question my own neurodivergence. It led to actually also getting a close member in my family diagnosed with
mm.
autism. And it was actually through those processes that I started to question my own neurodivergence. So I got assessed, and yes, I'm autistic. And I'll just say that the diagnosis gave me more clarity than confusion.
Man, I feel you on that. And that's really interesting. And I think that for a lot of us with disabilities, you know, if we aren't around it all the time, there's no way that we would have a real full understanding of disability. And so to hear your experience of, being with part of the disability community, being around disabled people, giving you some additional clarity, and then of course being diagnosed, um, it's really helpful to, I think, the folks who are tuning in because the disability journey can be different for everybody, and I think that the more information that we can put out there, the more folks can find out about their own lived experience or the lived experience of others as well. So I really appreciate that point. I think that neurodivergence, of course, can have such an impact on your understanding and perception of like school and like how you learn what you pick up um and you went through obviously K through 12 to college, etc. um was there at any point during that experience um did you kind of wonder like are things more difficult? Anything like that that you want to shed some light on?
You know, obviously, I didn't know the word stimming until like in the last few years. But in retrospect, some of my stims that I grew up with is that this is going to sound gross, but I picked on my hangnails all the time till they were bloody.
Hmm.
That was one. Number two, I folded origami. Like anytime I got a little bit like anxious or just like felt like I needed to fill a void, I would take like pieces of paper, any paper that I can find, including candy wrappers and notebook paper and magazine paper, any paper that I can find, and I would just start folding origami.
Mm, mm.
Now,
Wow, that's fascinating.
origami, though, after a while, I would fold origami at recess because I would be playing alone at times. Not always, but sometimes when I'm playing alone, I would just start folding origami just to fill the void, just so that I don't feel alone. But there was, I think this was in third grade, in which some kids started to be curious about
Mm,
origami
mm,
and they wanted to learn how to fold. So, yes, I remember teaching how to fold origami. I remember like it was just a way to kind of make friends and make camaraderie with people.
mm,
And so if you do go onto my Instagram, I've actually brought origami back into kind of like my quote unquote personal brand. So you do see me folding origami quite often on social media right now in my videos. When I was in freshman high school year, toward the end of the year, there was a group assignment in social studies where basically we were tasked to do something, to complete a project as a group. And I remember being in this group, and my one and only kind of school friend was also in the group. And there's maybe like, I don't know, six of us, something like that. And I remember we had a whole week to do this assignment, and no one was doing anything. Like nobody was contributing, nobody was like starting a conversation. This is like late 90s. And so email was still not a thing. We had each other's phone numbers, that no cell phones. But anyways, there was just no like communication about how we're going to finish this assignment. 3 days, 4 days passed by, nobody's doing anything. So I just was like, hey, you all, I'm just going to complete this assignment because I don't want to get a bad grade. And this is like honors social studies here, you know? So I just went ahead and did the assignment. And not only that, I went like far above and beyond and made this creative thing. I can't remember what the assignment was about. And then when day came, the whole group came about, but I was the person that presented everything, and I made it seem like everybody contributed.
Mm.
Well, what I didn't know was that it was going to be graded not by the teacher, but by the people in the group. So what happened was I gave everyone an A minus.
Okay.
Just feeling that, well, I kind of did this whole thing, but I don't want to be mean, right?
Right, right.
Everybody else in the group gave me an F, like a
What?
C or an F. Yep. And then even the one and only school friend I had who knows that I did that whole assignment
Mm.
gave me like a B minus. I think she didn't want to give me a C, but she
Mm.
gave me a B minus. And so basically, out of all the group members, I got the lowest grade. And this
Mm.
did not seem right.
Mm.
So but also it was just this massive social embarrassment. Um, and but the injustice there was just really big. And so it was like, Mom, my mom doesn't speak English, but I said, Mom, I need you to come to school because this is wrong. And somehow we got to correct this. I'll do the talking. And you just have to be there, just as a parent,
Right.
because usually a parent would probably speak up at this moment, but mom doesn't speak English. And so I called my mom, and
Mm.
my mom came to school with me. Anyways, long story short, the results did not change. The teacher did
Mm.
not change the grade, saying that, well, part of the lesson of this assignment was to learn how to work as a team. Well,
Wow.
why did she not mention that at the top of the assignment? So anyways, long story short, maybe for a neurotypical child at this point, they would just learn,
Right.
digest, carry on. But in
Mm.
my case, I just said, I'm not returning to school anymore. So
Mm.
I didn't return to school. And I
Oh.
said, you know what? I don't want any friends because friends are just going to betray me.
Mm.
So, yeah, so after that, I didn't return to school. And then I
Wow.
homeschooled for a whole year after that. But when I told this story to the psychologist that assessed me for neurodivergence 3.5 years ago, this was a pretty big factor
Mm.
in kind of her assessment. Infinite Flow today is a disability-led, cross-disability represented dance company, or I should say professional dance company and nonprofit with a mission to advance disability inclusion and reimagine possibilities one
Mm.
dance at a time. Um, we're recording this at a very interesting time in which, yes, I am working on the evolution and the Infinite Flow Dance 2.0 right now. But up until now, we have, as a professional dance troupe that has both dancers with apparent and non-apparent disabilities, we have performed over 400 times, everything
Mm.
from school assemblies, community festivals, to large corporate events, global events. We consider the internet to also be the stage. So we've created some fascinating dance films and content which have reached over 100 million people. School assemblies are a very, very big part of the work that we do in our hearts. And so we've served, I think we're like at 35,000 youth across school, through school assembly programs. And I'll just say this much, my background is in concert dance. One of the important things about starting any kind of social enterprise, social impact, nonprofit, it's really about better understanding the problem. Not just the solution, but you got to better understand the problem first to get to the solution. And I'll just say in the 10 years, every single year, I learned something new about the real problem. And the real problem, when you start peeling the onion one layer at a time, the problem that you saw was more and more systemic and more like it's not, it wasn't like, I started Infinite Flow with disabled people don't have equal access to dance. That's where it started.
Right, right.
But when I started asking why and why and why and why and why, there was so much more and so much deeper. And so much of this is so ingrained in our society that like we don't even see it as a problem.
Right.
Like, and I mean, and just so I know, again, I'm still at the time of recording this podcast, I am still finding the words to articulate all of this.
Right.
But I'll just say that like the stigma that's related to disability,
Mhm.
that's it's very, very deep on where that even comes from.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'll say, as somebody who's been a part of disability spaces for a really long time, something that always I appreciate and it jumps out, and I'd love for you to just mention anything or say anything about what this part of the experience has been like, but having dancers who are wheelchair users and non-wheelchair users means a lot to so many folks who are wheelchair users who either assume that I'll never really be able to dance with, non-wheelchair users in a significant way. I'll have to figure out how to dance with other wheelchair users, or it's going to be awkward. But what would you say to that as far as that part of what you do, being such a major part?
I know that with a disability, whether you can see it or not, comes with challenges. We need to acknowledge that. However, when I'm in the studio, you know, I let go of that. And I also do my best to the dancers that I'm working with to also let go of that. What if we used your wheelchair, Eric, as a tool for creativity? Because
Mm,
guess what? There's some stuff that you can do as a wheelchair user that I can't
mm,
on feet.
right.
So that's cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? And so you know, I'm not a proponent of toxic positivity either.
Mm,
However, like even if it's for that 1 hour in the dance studio, can
mm,
we think of our differences and disabilities as sources of creativity and power,
mm,
and instead of thinking of them as a hindrance?
yeah.
So yeah, so that's where I start from. On a more tactical, tangible level, I'll just say this much. Out of the few things that are newly being implemented, one of the things that is much needed is, well, two things. We need more disabled dance teachers, if we're talking about dance tactically here.
Mm,
And we need dance educators to be educated on how to integrate disabled students, whether it's kids or adults.
mm,
So I am piloting a accessible dance certification program this year.
Wow.
And again, tactical, it's dance, specifically dance and movement. And a lot of this, like I'm gonna work on this over a sprinted week or so, but with some of the notes that I've started to write down and what this certification is going to include, a lot of it is mindset.
Mm.
It's not even like hey, when you have a student like this, you need to do this or that, because guess what? Like, this, like let's say you have 6 students with autism. They're all going to have different access needs and learning needs. So you can't put like a diagnosis in a box when you're a teacher either. So it's more like, okay, when you do have that student with a difference that's in your class, what's your process to make sure that that they're able to participate?
Mm.
Like, what does that process look like?
The last 2 questions that I have for you. First one, is there something in pop culture, movie, book, TV show, music, song that you're just really excited about right now that you would encourage folks who are tuning in to check out?
Oh,
Yeah.
but okay. Barbie, there is an autistic Barbie now that was
Yes.
created in collaboration with the Autism Self-Advocacy Network,
Yes.
which, I have much respect for. I've never been involved with them yet, but I do get their newsletters. I do read their newsletters, and I know that it is autism, it's an autism-led organization.
Yes.
And Um, and so yeah, Autistic Barbie.
So last question for you. What is your game plan for 2026? What are you most looking forward to? I know you've talked about some of the changes and some of the shifts that Infinite Flow is looking at, but what are you kind of most excited about 2026 game plan going forward?
Um, that is to be revealed. So I don't want to talk about it too much right now. But we're
Absolutely.
celebrating 10 years and we have some cool things going on.
Absolutely. No, we really appreciate your time, Marissa. We'll definitely be uplifting Infinite Flow on Disability Rights California's social media and share it out with as many folks as we can so that people can support what you do, and get excited about all that Infinite Flow is doing throughout California and throughout the country.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, DRC, and you, Eric, for inviting me onto this podcast. I feel like DRC does so much for the community, so thank you. And you do a lot for the community too, so thank you. And I'm sure we will come back, together also working on some legislation, hopefully soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marissa.
Thank you, Eric.
This has been The Game Plan, a production of Disability Rights California. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the platform of your choice. See you next time.